when I realized that I was the villainous female supporting character in a CEO romance novel. My domineering CEO husband and I had already been married for 2 years. According to the plot of the book, in another half a year, I would have to step aside and yield my position. And those 6 months would be exactly the 6 months in which I would keep courting disaster while simultaneously pushing forward the relationship between the male and female leads. Chapter 1. When I got up in the morning, as usual, I prepared my dear husband's favorite sandwich and his favorite hand-ground coffee. Then I fastened his tie, fixed his cufflinks, and saw him out the door, standing at the entrance, watching the rear of the car fade into the distance. A sudden flash of insight struck my mind, and everything I had once forgotten came rushing back. That instant truly felt like a moment of enlightenment, as if I had broken through into sudden awakening. Here's what happened. 25 years ago, carrying memories of my previous life, I was reborn directly into this book's world. At the beginning, I didn't know that I had transmigrated into a novel. Not until a man, smiling so broadly that his eyes nearly disappeared, said, "Baby, we finally have a name now. We'll call you Charlotte. What do you think?" The man in front of me was my dad, Pablo. As for Mary, no need to guess. She was definitely my mom. The name Charlotte, how should I put it? It was a bit ordinary. Although the name Charlotte sounded somewhat familiar to me, I didn't think too much about it. After all, such an unoriginal name had a very high chance of being shared by many people. Then he continued, "My daughter is really beautiful. Yesterday Kim's second brother even wanted us to betroth Charlotte to his son as his future wife. Humph. He really thinks too highly of himself." At this moment, a gentle female voice chimed in. "Hee. I actually think Vic is pretty good. Our two families know each other well, so we wouldn't have to worry about our daughter being mistreated in the future. Let him dare. I'd like to see who dares to bully my daughter. I'd fight them to the death." They said more after that, but I didn't hear a single word. In my mind, only one name remained. Vic. Victor. Victor? Victor. In that instant, I finally understood where that sense of familiarity with the name Charlotte came from. Wasn't this exactly a character from a novel I had just read before my transmigration? It was a classic domineering CEO sweet romance novel. As is standard for such novels, one character is the domineering CEO, and the other is the sweet love interest. In that book, the CEO was Victor Kim, an aloof, cold, and emotionally distant domineering president. The sweet love interest was Elisa, a lively, warm, and sunshine-filled junior secretary, a newcomer to the workplace. She encountered countless setbacks and blows on the job, yet even so, she remained full of passion and expectation for life. Her innocence and resilience made the big boss CEO look at her in a new light. Not only did he refrain from blaming her mistakes, he even gave her a great deal of help. And just like that, bit by bit, the big boss's initial curiosity toward the little secretary transformed into deep affection. Thus, the two embarked on a romantic love story. And for a beautiful love to become enduring and unbreakable, it always needs a few blind fools to add fuel to the fire. Charlotte was precisely that blind fool. Charlotte and Victor grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Their families arranged a betrothal early on, and as soon as they reached the legal age, they married and registered officially. Charlotte loved Victor deeply, but Victor's feelings toward Charlotte were more responsibility than love. Or rather, before Elisa appeared, Victor didn't even know what love was. His career and marriage seemed to have been laid out for him in advance. He only needed to follow the predetermined steps. But Elisa's appearance was like a beam of sunlight, slicing through the stillness of stagnant water and igniting a passion Victor had never experienced before. That said, the two of them were innocent. Although the air between them was filled with bubbles of love, they never crossed the boundaries of morality. To advance the plot, this was the moment when Charlotte was supposed to appear. As a wife, she quickly noticed something was off about her husband. Following the clues step by step, she eventually found Elisa. Then came all kinds of suppression and bullying directed at Elisa. None of Charlotte's actions caused Elisa any real harm. On the contrary, they helped Victor finally recognize his true feelings for Elisa. At this point, I only want to say one thing. Well done. After repeatedly stirring up trouble, Victor grew more and more disgusted with Charlotte, to the point that he even proposed a divorce. How could Charlotte possibly agree? She directly hired people to kidnap Elisa, intending to destroy her. That move completely crossed Victor's bottom line. He used ruthless methods to bring down the Mu family, and then repaid her in kind, throwing Charlotte Mu to a group of street thugs. Just like that, Charlotte died quietly, without anyone noticing. Victor, meanwhile, went on to live a blissful life with Elisa. Later on, they even had a pair of twins. Happy ending. Bullshit. When I realized that I had transmigrated into a novel, there was only one belief left in my heart. Cherish life. Stay away from Victor. And that was exactly what I did. Well, at least before I turned 3. Before the age of 3, I fully demonstrated just how much I hated Victor. If I saw him, I cried. If he came close, I bit him. If I had milk, I saved it just to spit it on him. If I needed to pee, I waited to pee on him. As a result, Vic would avoid me whenever he saw me. I was quite satisfied with this. I thought that as long as I kept it up, I would definitely end up as nothing more than a passerby in Victor's life. But fate insisted on working against me. On my 3rd birthday, smack, it felt as if something struck my brain. In an instant, I completely forgot everything about transmigrating into a novel. All that remained in my eyes and heart was Victor's face, so stunning it made people crave it. Over the next 22 years, I became Victor's obsessive fangirl, chasing after him every single day. And he, strangely enough, seemed to enjoy being pestered by me, never once rejecting it. This only fueled my arrogance. And just like that, without any suspense at all, we walked straight into marriage. No, a grave. Standing outside the villa, I pinched my thigh hard, so hard that tears and snot streamed down my face. Damn it, good looks have led me astray. When I walked into the villa, the dining table in the living room still held the delicately prepared sandwiches and the steaming hand-ground coffee, untouched. Thinking back carefully, Victor had stopped eating the breakfasts I made 4 days ago. The reason he gave was, too early. Not hungry. I didn't think much of it and still got up early every day to make breakfast for him. I always thought, maybe he'll be hungry today? What if he's hungry and there's nothing to eat? But now, with my memories restored, I finally understood the real reason. It wasn't that he wasn't hungry. It was that he was saving his appetite to eat the breakfast Elisa brought him at the office. Elisa said drinking coffee in the morning was bad. Elisa said sandwiches lacked the warmth of real life. Elisa said, I like soy milk and fried dough sticks the most. And the millet porridge I cook myself. President Kim, please have a taste. SSS, ha. I rubbed my chest. It hurt a little. What should I do? Chapter 2. Sitting at the dining table, eating the sandwich I made myself. I found it completely tasteless, like chewing on wax. Damn fate. Truly heartless. If I had always remembered that I'd transmigrated into a novel, I never would have gone anywhere near Victor. Knowing full well that he would fall in love with someone else in the future and still getting tangled up with him, wasn't that just self-humiliation? If I had only transmigrated into this book at this very moment, I would have immediately asked for a divorce and cut Victor and all this messy nonsense cleanly out of my life. But it's been 22 years. I've simped for Victor for 22 years. I genuinely love him. Victor is different with me. I've always believed that Victor loved me too. Maybe not as deeply as I loved him, but I was still the unique one in his heart. That belief was the reason I could chase after him for so many years. And now you're telling me he doesn't love me, that he has someone else he truly loves. What is this supposed to be? Trying to kill me? At that moment, the housekeeper came in through the door. Seeing me, she asked, Madam, what would you like for lunch today? I'll go buy groceries. Suddenly thinking of something, I stood up abruptly. Aunt Lou, make some dishes that Sir likes. I'll go to his company at noon. All right, you get started first. I'm heading out for a bit. Okay. I drove a red sports car out of the villa and headed straight for the hospital. My period was a week late this month. I hadn't thought much of it before, after all. My cycle had never been regular. But after my memories returned, something else came to mind. In the original story, Charlotte had once been pregnant, though she herself didn't know it. One time, she went to Victor's company. The moment she pushed open the door, she saw Elisa tying Victor's tie. In truth, there was nothing going on between them. Elisa had accidentally spilled coffee on Victor. And since Victor, who had always had his tie fixed by Charlotte, didn't know how to handle such things, Elisa had no choice but to help him. But Charlotte didn't know that. She went berserk, rushed forward, grabbed Elisa by the hair, and raised her hand to slap her. Of course Victor wouldn't let that happen. He grabbed Charlotte and shoved her out. That shove caused Charlotte to lose the baby. And after losing the child, Charlotte's hatred toward Elisa only deepened. For once, Victor felt a trace of guilt toward Charlotte and transferred Elisa out of the secretary department. But this plot point wasn't for Charlotte's sake at all. It was meant to advance Victor and Elisa's relationship. After all, a single day apart feels like 3 autumns. I drove steadily toward the hospital. Victor and I had been married for 2 years, but we had always used protection. When it came to having children, neither of us had pushed for it. We seemed to have a tacit understanding. What Victor thought, I didn't know. As for me, I simply wanted a few more years of a world that belonged only to the 2 of us. Soon, I arrived at the hospital. Numbly, I registered and went to the obstetrics and gynecology department. Then came waiting for my number, seeing the doctor, paying fees, undergoing tests, and waiting for results. The entire process took 2 hours. For those 2 hours, my mind was completely blank. I couldn't think of anything, and I was incapable of thinking at all. The doctor looked at the test results and said, "Based on the results, you are indeed pregnant." My heart trembled slightly. My hand moved unconsciously to my abdomen. There was really a small life here, a child belonging to Victor and me. I wasn't mentally prepared, but this was undoubtedly an unexpected joy. And yet, at this very moment, I felt utterly lost. The doctor asked, "Do you plan to keep the child?" I suddenly looked up. Keep it or not? How could that even be a question? No, it truly was a question. Because I hesitated. It wasn't until I reached the hospital entrance that I finally snapped out of my dazed state. Watching the crowds of people coming and going, I took a deep breath and drove back. 22 years of feelings, 2 years of marriage, and the child in my womb. I don't want to let my life be sentenced to death because of the plot of a novel. Victor, please, don't disappoint me. When I got home, Aunt Lou had already finished preparing the food. As she packed the dishes into containers, she smiled and said, "Couples as loving as you and Sir are really rare these days. Just watching you makes me envious." In the past, I would have smiled brightly at that. But at this moment, I didn't even have the strength to lift the corners of my mouth. The villa was about a 30-minute drive from Victor's company. By the time I arrived downstairs at his office building, it was exactly noon. The receptionist recognized me. There was no need to announce my arrival. I went straight to the private elevator and reached the 32nd floor without any obstruction. The first person I saw was Liam, Victor's assistant. The moment he saw me, his expression stiffened. A flash of panic crossed his eyes, though he quickly returned to normal. "Madam, what brings you here?" he asked. I gave a light laugh. "Where's Victor?" Liam replied. "The president is in his office." "I'll notify him." I grabbed his arm. "No need. I'll go myself." Although I didn't come to Victor's company often, I still knew the way. When I reached the door of the CEO's office, I gently pushed it open. The lighting in the office was excellent. At noon, dazzling sunlight poured through the spotless glass windows, flooding the room with warmth and brightness. Against the light, I saw a man and a woman sitting at the desk. In front of them were cute, cat-shaped lunch boxes. They were sitting very close, eating with clear enjoyment. The girl seemed to be talking about something, smiling as she spoke. The man lifted his head and listened attentively. Perhaps it was the sunlight, but at that moment, the man looked exceptionally gentle, a kind of gentleness I had never seen before. Afraid that I might be mistaken, I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the scene. Click. I clicked my tongue softly. Damn it, I forgot to mute the sound. I ruined the moment. How careless of me. They both seemed startled by my sudden appearance. For a few seconds, their expressions froze. Seeing that look on Victor's face actually pleased me. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Victor frowned at me, his expression clearly showing displeasure at my arrival. "Ah, Victor, how hurtful." Elisa's face turned pale, and she abruptly stood up. She moved too quickly. The container of soup beside her tipped over completely. Ah! The soup spilled onto her legs, and she cried out in pain from the heat. Victor stood up at once, grabbed her arm, and pulled her back. I turned and left, unwilling to watch what happened next. After all, we were all supposed to be respectable people. I had no intention of doing anything undignified like in the original story. Liam stood behind me, looking extremely tense. I shoved the lunch boxes into his arms. Here, you can eat them. Liam looked utterly horrified. I didn't leave the company. Instead, I went to the secretary department. When I walked in, several secretaries stood up at once. Clearly, they all knew who I was. Good. That saved me the trouble of explaining myself. Who is Selena? I asked. A seductive-looking woman stepped forward nervously. Madam, that's me. May I ask what you need? I took out my business card and handed it to her. I'm very interested in what you're holding. Contact me. Selena looked completely stunned. By the time I walked out of the secretary department, Victor was already standing outside. I withdrew all emotion from my face and brushed past him expressionlessly. But he clearly had no intention of letting me go. He grabbed my hand. He asked, "Why did you come here?" I said, "Let go." Maybe my tone was too cold. After all, I had never spoken to him like this before. Victor tightened his grip on my hand. Charlotte, don't make a scene. I let out a slow breath. Victor, let go. I don't want to talk to you right now, so don't humiliate yourself. Victor's face darkened. Anger flared in his eyes as he stared at me. I met his gaze without backing down. I, Charlotte, have never been someone with a good temper. The only reason I had always been gentle and accommodating toward him was because I loved him. Now I realize, there's no need anymore. I shook off Victor's hand and left the company without looking back. Chapter 3. After leaving the company, I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a hotel. Selena didn't disappoint me. Only an hour and a half later, she contacted me. In the original story, Selena was just a minor throwaway character. She was extremely confident in her looks, so confident that it made her somewhat arrogant. So when Elisa gained Victor's favor, Selena was consumed by jealousy, and a woman's sixth sense can be terrifyingly sharp. You could say Selena was the first person to realize there was something fishy between Elisa and Victor. Driven by a tangle of complicated emotions, she secretly captured every ambiguous moment when Elisa and Victor were alone together. Those photos later ended up in Charlotte's hands and became the fuse that pushed Charlotte into complete villain mode. I'm not interested in becoming a villain, but dirt? I love dirt. I paid a sum of money to buy all the juicy gossip Selena had. I had to admit, she delivered. There weren't just photos, but videos as well. I stared at that material for nearly 2 hours, until my eyes were sore and my stomach was growling. I rubbed my brow. I had no appetite and didn't feel like eating, but thinking of the little seed in my belly, I still ordered some food. I wondered, if I let him go hungry now, would that count as domestic abuse? Just after hanging up the phone with the hotel service, my phone rang. It was Victor. 7:27 p.m. His usual time to get home after work. I didn't answer. I hung up directly. He didn't call again. That was Victor. After hanging up on Victor, I dialed lawyer Zhao's number. President Mu, what can I do for you? He asked. Help me draft a divorce agreement. I need it tomorrow. The other end of the line went silent for a long moment. I almost thought there was something wrong with the connection. Hello, Lawyer Zhao? He finally snapped out of it. Why, you said what? Whose divorce agreement? I found it amusing. Was I supposed to ask him to draft someone else's? Mine. Victor's and mine. This time, Lawyer Zhao responded quickly. Understood. How would you like to divide the assets? My assets remain mine. His remain his. As for the jointly owned portion, I don't want it. Victor and I each had our own businesses, but we also shared quite a lot. Over the years, investments, collections, if we were to itemize and split everything, it wouldn't be something that could be done quickly. Lawyer Zhao hesitated. Then you're leaving with nothing? I didn't like that phrase. Then make it so that he gives up the jointly owned portion. It all goes to me. Victor had at least that much grace. All right, I'll draft it immediately and send it to you once it's done. Lawyer Zhao worked incredibly fast. Half an hour later, it was finished and sent to me. I was stunned. That speed. I hadn't even finished my meal yet. Decision made. At the end of the year, I'm giving Lawyer Zhao a huge bonus. After eating, I plan to go downstairs to print the divorce agreement and also have those photos printed. The moment I opened the door, a dark figure loomed in front of me. I jumped in fright and hurriedly looked up. It was Victor. His brows were tightly knit, his expression dark. I let out a breath of relief and snapped irritably. Are you trying to scare me to death? I wasn't surprised by Victor's appearance. He was a man with a strong sense of responsibility. As long as I was still considered his responsibility, he wouldn't just leave me alone. Since I didn't answer his calls, he was bound to come looking for me. Why didn't you go home? He asked in a low voice. You're here just in time. I said, go inside and sit for a bit. I have something to say to you. As I spoke, I moved to leave. Where are you going? He asked. To print some things. I'll go with you. I pushed him away and looked at him firmly, leaving no room for argument. No, wait here. Victor frowned. In the end, he still let me go. Once inside the elevator, I let out a long breath, tightening my slightly trembling hands. I scolded myself under my breath for being useless. When I returned after printing everything, Victor was sitting properly on the sofa. He was always like this, meticulous, restrained, like an emotionless machine. But after seeing those photos this afternoon, I finally realized that wasn't entirely true. I glanced at him, then lowered my gaze. The divorce agreement was prepared in duplicate. I took a pen from my bag, signed my name, and handed it to Victor. He took it with a puzzled expression. When his eyes landed on the words on the document, his expression changed abruptly. He looked up at me in disbelief. Divorce? You want to divorce me? I nodded. Yes. Victor stared at me darkly. I met his gaze calmly. After a long moment, he slammed the document onto the table. Why? I took out the developed photos and tossed them in front of him. The top one showed him and Elisa standing on the rooftop, looking into the distance from behind. The angle was perfect, capturing the moment they met each other's eyes and smiled. Victor flipped through the photos one by one. His expression remained calm, unreadable. Even the hand holding the photos didn't tremble. I let out a cold laugh. Compared to me, the difference in composure was obvious. You were spying on me? Victor looked up after finishing, irritation and suppressed anger flashing in his eyes. His reaction made me laugh in disbelief. So after seeing all this, the only thing you can think of is accountability? Victor, impressive. You've truly shown me how good you are at dodging the real issue. But let me clarify something for you. I wasn't stalking you. Someone happened to take these photos. I just paid for them. Any problem with that? What? Are you planning to sue me for violating your portrait rights? If so, I'm happy to go all the way. Victor frowned deeply. That's not what I meant. She and I are just a boss and subordinate. There's nothing between us. If you're throwing a tantrum over her, there's really no need. Heh. I let out a cold chuckle. Of course, I know. There's nothing. No holding hands. No hugging. No kissing. No sleeping together. But so what? Am I really that pathetic that I have to wait until things get even uglier? Until I'm publicly humiliated? Before I'm allowed to fight back? Sorry, my bottom line isn't there. Victor's gaze turned icy. He stood and stepped toward me. Charlotte, what exactly are you making a fuss about? I already told you there's nothing between us. What more do you want? I frowned and took several steps back. Do you not understand human language? I said I want a divorce. I'm not going to live with someone who could cheat at any time. Victor looked irritated. He growled. Charlotte, stop making a scene. Pack your things and come home with me. I can pretend nothing happened. That finally set me off. Nothing happened? Why should nothing have happened? You do shameless things and still have the nerve to argue with me like this? Divorce. Divorce. I want a divorce, right now. Immediately. Shut up. Victor raised his voice. I flinched in surprise. Flames burned in his eyes. Charlotte, don't let me hear that word again. You're not a child. You should be responsible for what you say. That sentence completely enraged me. Responsible? How dare he say that word to me? Without thinking, I grabbed my bag and hurled it at him. I rushed forward, pulled out one photo, and slapped it against his face. In the picture, Victor was eating the buns Elisa bought him, a cup of soy milk in his hand. The date on the photo was the day before yesterday. I wake up an hour early every single morning to grind coffee and make sandwiches for you. I've never slept in once. I feed you well and take care of you like a king. And then someone tosses you a rotten bone. And you think it's a gourmet feast? You ungrateful bastard. My chest heaved violently. I was furious beyond measure. Don't talk to me about responsibility, Victor. You don't deserve that word. Chapter 4. This was probably the first time Victor had ever been cursed at like that. The way he looked at me, he practically wanted to devour me alive. I didn't care. If anything, I felt utterly refreshed. Victor stared at me deeply, then ground his teeth and said, "Are you sure you want a divorce?" I handed the divorce agreement and the pen to him, using my actions to prove my resolve. His expression shifted several times before he finally signed his name on the agreement. He pressed down so hard that the strokes nearly pierced through the paper. He didn't read a single word of its contents. I raised an eyebrow, suddenly feeling like I'd suffered a loss. Had I known it would be this easy, I should have taken him for a bigger cut. After all, whoever complains about having too much money? With a dark face and barely contained fury, Victor stood up and left, watching his back. I reminded him, "Bring your ID and household registration. I'll be waiting for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau entrance tomorrow morning." His steps paused for a moment. Then he left without turning back. I clicked my tongue. So rude. Early the next morning, I woke up just as dawn was breaking. I checked the time. 6 o'clock. That number made me angry. Years of conditioning, no one needed to wake me. No alarm clock required. My body clock dragged me out of sleep on time every day. This instinct reminded me yet again that years of genuine devotion had been fed straight to the dogs. Victor, bastard. Suppressing my resentment, I buried my head under the blanket and tried to go back to sleep, but no matter what I did, I couldn't. Annoying as hell, I tossed and turned for more than an hour before finally getting out of bed. Unwillingly, after breakfast and getting myself ready, I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I waited there for Victor. 2 hours passed. My patience ran out, and he still didn't show up. My mood sank straight to rock bottom. Victor, bastard. I got in my car and drove straight to Victor's company. When Liam saw me, he looked as if he were facing a formidable enemy. Visibly trembling, "Madam, the president is in a meeting. Would you like to wait in his office?" he asked cautiously. My expression must have been terrible. I didn't make things difficult for him and went straight to Victor's office. I had just sat down when there was a knock on the door. Then Elisa walked in timidly, as the sweet heroine of a CEO romance novel. Her features weren't strikingly beautiful, but put together they were very pleasing, fresh, delicate. The classic pure and innocent look, the kind that naturally made people want to protect her. "Miss, this is your coffee." "Miss?" I raised an eyebrow. "You don't know who I am?" Elisa widened her watery eyes and said, "You're President Kim's wife." I smiled faintly. "So you do know. That makes this interesting. The entire company calls me madam, yet you alone call me miss. What, are you unwilling to acknowledge my status as Victor's wife?" Elisa panicked and tried to wave her hands, forgetting she was holding coffee. A cup of scalding liquid poured straight over her hand. "Ah!" she screamed, her face turning pale instantly. I stood up with a dark expression and casually wiped my hand with the suit jacket Victor had draped over the chair. "Yesterday it was soup. Today it's coffee." "What? Are you lacking water in your destiny? With how clumsy you are, you'd have been fired 10 times over at my company. And yet Victor Kim keeps you by his side. True love indeed." Elisa looked as if she'd suffered a great humiliation. She stared at me stubbornly. Moo. President Kim and I are just in a normal superior-subordinate relationship. I admit today was my mistake, but there is absolutely nothing inappropriate between us. I hope you won't slander me. I tossed Victor's suit jacket onto the floor like trash. A normal superior-subordinate relationship? Let me tell you what that actually looks like. Every female secretary in this department keeps at least an arm's length of distance when walking with Victor. None of them bring him breakfast or cook him lunch. And none of them sit so close that their arms touch while eating. And lastly, Take a look around. Every secretary here wears professional attire, high heels, and carefully done makeup. Unlike you, dressed casually in sneakers, barefaced. What? Did the company open a special back door just for you? Elisa's face shifted between pale and flushed. Just as she was about to argue, I lifted my head and looked past her. Did you understand, President Kim? Elisa spun around abruptly the moment she saw Victor. She immediately put on a look of tearful grievance mixed with forced resilience. President Kim. Victor walked toward her with a grim expression. She looked at him expectantly, but he didn't spare her even a glance. Instead, he walked straight up to me. He grabbed my hand. What happened? Only then did I notice the stinging pain. I looked down and saw a patch of angry red on the back of my fair hand, burned by the coffee that had splashed earlier. Chapter 5. Facing Victor's look of apparent concern, I suddenly felt bored and uninterested. I shook off his grip. None of your business. Victor's face darkened. What exactly happened? Elisa bit her lower lip lightly, tears pooling in her eyes, threatening to fall. President Kim. It was my fault. I accidentally spilled the coffee just now. Only then did Victor Kim notice Elisa's trembling hand. He frowned slightly. That's enough. Go deal with it. Liam, go buy some burn ointment. Yes, President Kim. I'll go right away. Elisa glanced at Victor, then turned and left stubbornly. I let out a soft scoff. What kind of tragic lover's drama are you putting on here in front of me? You're making it look like I'm the villain breaking up a pair of star-crossed lovers. Victor shot me a glare. Charlotte, wasn't making a scene outside enough? You had to come to my company to keep causing trouble? Even though I was prepared, my heart was still stabbed by his words. I looked at him expressionlessly. What? Seeing me bully your little sweetheart hurts your heart. But what can I do? I'm still carrying the title of Mrs. Kim. As for those mistresses who come throwing themselves at you, I still have every right to discipline them. If you really cared so much about your little sweetheart, you shouldn't have stood me up. I waited for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau for 2 whole hours. Where were you? You didn't show up. Didn't even make a call. Is only your time valuable? Who the hell isn't making millions a minute? Victor, try acting like a decent human being. Victor's face grew darker by the second. Civil Affairs Bureau? What were you doing there? I stared at him in disbelief. What was I doing there? Sightseeing? Of course not. Divorce. What did you think we signed that divorce agreement for yesterday? Just for fun? That finally pushed me over the edge. My mind went blank, my vision darkened, and my body tipped backward uncontrollably. Charlotte! Victor caught me in time. I fell into his arms and shook my head. The dizziness came quickly and left just as fast. I was already fine, but the scent on him crept relentlessly into my nose. It had once been the most familiar, the most beloved smell in the world, but now it made me want to vomit. I shoved him away and gagged uncontrollably a couple of times. Charlotte. Realizing Victor was about to step forward again, I shouted sharply. Stop. Don't come any closer. The smell on you makes me sick. Victor froze where he stood. After a long moment, he growled. Have you made enough of a scene? What exactly do you want? I felt awful, physically awful, emotionally awful. I didn't know if it was because of the pregnancy, but a flood of emotions surged violently from the depths of my heart. I turned my head and glared at him fiercely. Divorce. I want a divorce, right now, immediately. Victor's eyes had been blazing with anger, but when I turned my face away, he suddenly froze. He stared at me blankly, then slowly walked closer and crouched down. His hand reached for my face. I turned my head to avoid it. He said, sounding lost. Charlotte, you're crying. I froze for a moment. Only then did I realize that I really was crying. How embarrassing. He said, Charlotte, we need to talk this through properly. Chapter 6. In the 25 years of my life shared with Victor, we were never absent from each other's world, not once. And yet, because of the 3-year age gap between us, it always felt as if I were chasing after him, trying to catch up. When I was 3, he was 6. I had just entered kindergarten, and he went off to elementary school. When I was 6, he was 9. I had just followed him into elementary school, only for his classroom to be moved from the west campus to the east. When I was 10, He was 13. I had just spent 1 year on the West Campus. And he went to middle school. By the time I entered middle school, he went to high school. When I entered high school, he went to university. And when I finally managed to get into the same university as him, he had already entered society and started his internship. So really, those 3 years were an insurmountable gap. Even so, he still accompanied me through all 4 years of my university life. In college, I confessed to him. He accepted. We got together. Back then, I rented a small apartment off campus, and Victor moved in with me. At that time, Victor was already very busy, and the apartment was far from his company. Yet even so, he still came back every day to that little home that belonged only to the two of us. Back then, I thought, Victor truly loved me. In the quiet private dining room, Victor was holding the menu, reading it carefully. My gaze drifted elsewhere. I didn't want to look at him. What would you like to eat? He asked. I had no intention of mistreating myself. I ordered a few light dishes and stopped there. Victor glanced at me with mild surprise but said nothing. He added 2 more dishes, then handed the menu back to the server and gestured for her to leave. As soon as the door closed, he suddenly stood up and sat down beside me. Before I could react, he grabbed my hand. I startled and instinctively tried to pull away. But Victor stopped me. Be good. Don't move, he said. His words made my heart ache slightly, as if someone had squeezed it with their fingers. I took a deep breath and said tiredly, "Don't touch me." Victor tightened his grip slightly. After a moment, he said, "Don't move. I'm applying medicine." His voice was hoarse, carrying a faint roughness that made my chest feel sour. I saw him take out a tube of ointment from his pocket. "I'll do it myself." I reached for the medicine, but Victor dodged my hand. "I'll do it," he said. "No, I can do it myself, Charlotte." Victor was angry. My hand, suspended in midair, froze, then dropped weakly to my side. Fine. We had already seen each other naked. What was the point of being coy now? I turned my head away, unwilling to look. Soon, a cool sensation spread across the back of my hand, along with the rough texture of Victor's fingertips brushing over my skin. My heart trembled slightly. "Charlotte," he asked quietly, "do you really want a divorce?" At some point, Victor had already returned to his seat across from me. I nodded when I heard his question. "Yes." "Just because of those photos?" "Yes." Victor took a deep breath. He was clearly irritated, suppressing his emotions. "I have never crossed any lines with her," he said. "Not before, not now, and never in the future." "What exactly are you bothered by?" "This is just a normal superior-subordinate relationship. You work too, don't you understand?" It was honestly impressive that Victor could repeat this kind of empty argument over and over again without getting tired. "Victor." I looked up at him. "Why don't you sit next to me? Why do you always sit across from me?" Victor frowned, clearly confused. He didn't seem to understand what I meant, or perhaps it was something he had never thought about at all. I continued calmly. "From the time I was 3 until now, 22 years. Let's calculate it simply. 300 days a year. That's 6,000 days. If we count just 1 meal a day, that means we've eaten at least 6,000 meals together. In all those 6,000 meals, you have never once sat beside me. You always sit across from me, just like now. Even when you sat next to me to apply the medicine, in the end you still returned to the seat across from me. Look at the distance between us, it's at least 1 meter. But when you sat with her, how far apart were you? 5 centimeters? Or 0? Victor stiffened. He stood up awkwardly, clearly at a loss. I raised my hand to stop him. "Don't come any closer. That was just an accident. The office only has that one table where people can eat." There was no way. I didn't let him finish. I cut him off directly. "Do you remember university? Back then, we lived in Ichang apartments. Every morning before you went to work, I would get up to make you breakfast. At first, I didn't know how to cook. I could only heat some milk or make plain rice porridge. But you couldn't eat that every day. So I started teaching myself. Whenever I didn't have classes, I stayed home experimenting with breakfast foods, steamed buns, dumplings, soy milk, fried dough sticks, wontons, noodles. Later on, I even started making egg-stuffed pancakes and jianbing at home. At that time, breakfast was the only meal you could eat at home. You traveled back and forth so hard because of me. I thought I had to make sure you ate well in the mornings, but you never had an appetite when you woke up. I could tell. You ate everything I made with obvious discomfort. So I simplified breakfast again and again. The only breakfast you could finish completely was a sandwich. 2 triangular slices of toast. 1 soft-boiled egg sprinkled with pepper. 2 slices of luncheon meat. 1 leaf of lettuce. And most importantly, no sauce. Ever. You probably didn't even realize this yourself. I figured it out meal by meal. As for hand-ground coffee, you don't like milk. It makes you bloated. You don't like soy milk either. You can't stand the texture, but coffee with milk goes down easily for you. Do you think I didn't know that drinking coffee in the morning is bad for the stomach? But you liked it. And did you ever once have stomach pain from drinking coffee in the morning? Victor, do you know what soup you drink every night? It's stomach-nourishing soup. Your stomach was taken care of by me, day after day. I built it up so that you could drink the coffee you like in the morning. So that even if you skipped a meal or two, your stomach wouldn't hurt. Not so you could go out and eat scraps. Victor looked terrible. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Finally, he stared at me steadily. It won't happen again, he said. Never again. I shook my head. There is no again. Victor, the smile you showed her, you never even showed me that smile when we took our wedding photos. When we took those photos, you wore the same expression the entire time. Later, I heard the staff whispering behind our backs. They said, "Is this man being forced into marriage? Look at him, he didn't smile once. He looks unhappy." I wasn't unhappy, Victor said quickly. I was nervous. There was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite understand. It almost looked like panic. I shook my head internally. Impossible. Victor had never panicked in his life. I rubbed my aching temples. Victor walked up to me, knelt down on one knee, and held my hand. He looked at me with more seriousness than he ever had when he proposed. "I'll transfer Elisa out of the secretary department. I won't meet her again in the future. Maybe I didn't handle the boundaries well, but I can promise you, my feelings toward her are nothing more than admiration. Admiration for her attitude toward life and work. Nothing beyond that." "You were moved," I said. Victor frowned. I wasn't. His tone was firm. No hesitation at all. I shook my head. "You were." Victor's expression grew increasingly irritated. "This is my own heart. If I say no, then it's no." I pulled my hand away sharply. Victor's face went cold as he looked at me without expression. "Victor, I know you too well. Over the years, women who hovered around you and tried to get close to you were countless, but you never spared them a single extra glance. This time is different. You broke your own rules too many times for her. She is the first in your 28 years of life. In other words, this is what people call true love. I am a businesswoman. If an investment is clearly about to bankrupt me, I will cut my losses immediately and minimize the damage. Victor, you were moved. You fell for someone else. So, I don't want you anymore." Chapter 7. Victor refused my request for a divorce. That was only to be expected. After all, Victor was neither an impulsive man nor someone who acted purely on emotion. Just like in the book, even in the end, he wasn't divorced. He was merely widowed. Thinking of that made me shiver involuntarily. Victor wouldn't actually want to kill me, would he? I shook my head. Probably not. There were many plot developments in the book that I could understand. The only one I absolutely couldn't accept was Victor bringing down the Mu family. That simply wasn't something Victor would do. If the Mu family were destined to fall, then at most Victor might lend a hand, but the deeper cause would definitely come from within the Mu group itself. It seemed I needed to thoroughly comb through the company. After laying everything out clearly with Victor, he looked somewhat dazed. In the end, he only said one thing: "I won't divorce you. We'll stay together properly." I felt I had already made myself clear enough. As for anything beyond that, I couldn't be bothered to say more. I wasn't his emotional counselor. It wasn't my responsibility to help him figure out his own feelings. I stood up and turned to leave. He grabbed me. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said. He didn't let go. "Which home?" "Violet," I replied. Hearing that, He seemed to relax slightly. Wait for me at home. I'll take care of everything. I shrugged, unconcerned. Violet was the place we lived in after getting married. He thought I was compromising by going back home, but I didn't tell him that I was only going back to clear things out. When I returned to Violet with a whole team of professional organizers, Aunt Lou was shocked. At a glance, it looked less like a move and more like a property seizure. She stared at me in confusion. "Madam, what are you doing?" "Moving out," I said. Before she could ask anything else, I began giving instructions. "Take down all the photos and wall art." "Yes." "Pack up all women's belongings in the second floor walk-in closet." "Yes." "Move the entire vanity from the master bedroom upstairs." "Yes." "Remove all the carpets and throw them away." "Yes." "Dig out the ginkgo tree outside." "Yes." "The rest of you, clear the entire house. Take away anything with feminine characteristics." "Yes." I arrived in force and left in force. Aunt Lou tried several times to approach me, but my calm demeanor discouraged her every time. She was employed by Victor and paid by Victor. Once I left this place, we would no longer have any intersection. There was no need for small talk. After leaving Violet, I didn't go home. Instead, I went to another property under my own name. Pablo and Mary were still traveling. There was no need to worry them. Besides, my mind was already made up about the divorce. I didn't want to hear anyone try to talk me out of it. After leaving, I blocked all of Victor's contact information and went straight to the company. For the next week, I practically lived at the office, going through every contract and financial record line by line. And just my luck, I actually found a problem. The company's finance director had secretly set up a shell company and was involved in tax evasion. If he had swallowed all that money himself, that would have been one thing. But he had transferred a small portion of it into my father's account under the name of shareholder dividends. Quite capable. Indeed. Breaking the law, and trying to make my father his scapegoat. Who gave him the nerve? Oh, my father did. Chapter 8. This finance director was one of the company's founding members, my father's closest brother-in-arms. He had followed him through thick and thin for so many years and had always looked after me. Who would have thought that the wolf biting your throat was right beside you all along? Still, it was understandable. If even Victor could change, what made anyone else an exception? Once I identified the root of the problem, I handed everything directly to lawyer Zhao. How should this be handled? As a law-abiding citizen, of course, according to the law. During the week I was buried in work. Many people tried to contact me. Among them, 3 were especially worth mentioning. They were Victor, Elisa, and Selena. I didn't see Victor Kim. He tried to force his way in, so I called the police. I didn't see Elisa either. Was I that bored? Did I really have time to chat with a mistress? As for Selena, I had to admit, she was something special, a truly rare specimen, with excellent potential to become a villainous female supporting character. I had no idea what signal I'd accidentally sent her, but she inexplicably started treating me as her superior and began sharing every single detail about Elisa and Victor with me. President Mu. Today President Kim tried to transfer Elisa out of the secretary department. She actually ran to his office and made a scene, saying she'd resign if that happened. President Kim replied, "Make sure you do a proper handover." President Mu. Elisa was sent down to the design department. After all that fuss, she still didn't leave. Well, I get it, Kim Group's benefits are great. Who'd want to go? Elisa brought President Kim breakfast again today. He didn't take it. She said, "Whether you eat it or not is your business, but I have to keep my promise." In the end, President Kim still didn't eat it and threw it straight into the trash. Honestly, well done. Her stuff belongs in the garbage anyway. But I smell something fishy. Promise? What promise? No, I have to look into this. I found out a month ago, Elisa had appendicitis. President Kim was the one who took her to the hospital. I checked my phone. Selena's latest message read, "Elisa ran to the rooftop again to accidentally run into President Kim. That place is basically his private area. We don't dare go up there. But she treats it like her own backyard." I replied, utterly speechless. "Aren't you afraid of getting your salary docked for being this idol?" Selena responded immediately, thrilled. "President Mu, you finally replied. Don't worry, President Kim's every move is under my surveillance. Do you want photos? I can send them right now. I was speechless. No, thanks. You don't need to call me madam. I'm already in the process of divorcing your President Kim, and you don't need to send me anything about Elisa and Victor anymore. Selena replied. President Mu. Don't say that. Losing to you. We can accept. We bow in defeat. But losing to Elisa? That's way too humiliating. I smiled faintly. Then you could always try taking her place yourself. After all, Selena was very much the seductive Rose type. Selena replied. No, that's President Kim. He probably doesn't even remember what my name is. What, do you think you're inferior to Elisa? Selena answered. How should I put it? We mortals can't compete with a White Lotus fairy, right? Seriously. Are men's eyes just decorative? The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Her message successfully amused me. Free tonight? Dinner's on me. Selena replied instantly. Yes. All my schedules make way for President Mu. We agreed to meet at Quinn's Western Restaurant. When he saw me, he looked surprised. Just you? Old Kim didn't come with you? I was even more surprised. When has he ever come with me? Quinn rubbed his nose, chuckled awkwardly, and walked away. Chatting with Selena was actually quite enjoyable. She was the type with a generous figure and a simple mind, straightforward to the core. Even when she tried to be subtle, it was obvious at a glance. Being around her was relaxing. But life is a stage play, full of coincidences and unexpected turns. For example, Elisa was actually working part-time at this restaurant. When she saw me, she instinctively tried to avoid me, but the very next second, she seemed to steel herself and stood her ground. Selena rolled her eyes the moment she saw her. Oh, what kind of inspirational persona are you trying to put on this time? Elisa looked aggrieved and indignant. You should ask Mu that. I was genuinely confused. What did I do? I waved her over. Come on, tell me, what did I do to you? Elisa's eyes were filled with anger and grievance as she said. Mu, if my relationship with President Kim caused you any misunderstanding, I can explain, but dragging my parents into this, don't you think that's going too far? Elisa, I said coldly. Since I've given you a chance to speak, use it wisely. Don't play word games with me here. Holding me accountable? You're not qualified. Chapter 9. The moment my words fell, Victor arrived in a hurry, dust still clinging to him. He was wearing a light gray suit, the one I had bought for him. A miscalculation on my part. I had thought of everything, except the things I had personally bought for him. Those should have been taken away too. I smiled faintly. Looks like I spoke too soon. You do seem qualified after all. See? Your backup has arrived. Elisa turned around, delight flashing across her face when she saw Victor. But Victor didn't spare her even a single glance. His gaze was locked onto me, unmoving for even a second. I looked at him. He looked haggard, thinner, with a trace of dejection between his brows. I said, here to stand up for your little sweetheart? Why go through all this underhanded nonsense? Just divorce me outright. What, are you chasing thrills? Victor seemed not to hear me at all. He took 2 steps forward, staring at me intently. Why didn't you come home? Why won't you see me? I hardened my expression, unwilling to waste time on such meaningless talk. I turned to Elisa. I know you've been trying to find me these past few days. I'll give you one last chance. Say what you need to say, quickly. Elisa looked at Victor with pleading eyes. When she realized he wouldn't respond at all, humiliation washed over her face as she turned to me. Mu, why did you fire my parents? They've worked diligently at Mu Group for so many years. How could you dismiss them just because of personal grudges? What did they do wrong? Such a coincidence? Elisa's parents actually worked at my company? How convenient for creating trouble for the villainous. Elisa, have you been watching too many romance dramas? Do you have any idea how many employees my company has? Tens of thousands, top to bottom. Who do you think your parents are, important enough for me to personally fire? Let alone the fact that their dismissal has nothing to do with me, even if I did give the order. So what? Do you think I run a company this big and make this much money to do charity? No, I do it because it makes me happy. As the highest decision maker in the company, do I not even have the authority to fire a few people with questionable conduct? President Kim, do I? I asked. My hand tightened around the wine bottle. If Victor said even a single word I didn't like, I was ready to smash it over his head. Victor looked at me and said, "Come home with me. I've had everything moved back. Everything will be just like before. Come home with me." I was utterly baffled. Was something wrong with this man's brain? Elisa couldn't take it anymore. "On what grounds do you say my parents have questionable conduct?" "On the grounds that they raised a daughter with questionable conduct." Elisa flushed bright red. Moo, you're going too far. Just because you're rich and powerful, you think you can bully people like this? What did I do wrong? How can you talk about me like that? I was just grateful to President Kim for taking me to the hospital. Buying him breakfast and making him lunch was just to thank him. What did I do wrong? I nodded sympathetically. I understand. I really do. I glanced at Selena, who was enthusiastically enjoying the drama, and asked her, "If you had appendicitis, would you call Victor?" Selena shook her head vigorously, so hard that even her chest bounced. "Am I out of my mind? Don't I have a phone? I'd call an ambulance. Don't I have parents? They'd be the first ones I'd contact. Don't I have friends? Am I that pitiful? Worst case, I could crawl out and knock on a neighbor's door." Elisa's face alternated between pale and green. "And even if I did call President Kim," Selena added, "the most he'd probably do is help me call an ambulance." A perfectly timed finishing blow, each word striking true. Yet Elisa's expression brightened instead. Victor stared straight ahead and said, "I was wrong. It won't happen again." I found it dull to listen. "Elisa, don't be discouraged. Once I finish divorcing Victor, you can take my place. As for now, just endure it a little longer, and don't give me a chance to kill you." Victor clenched his jaw and grabbed my hand. "We're not divorcing. Not now. Not ever. There's no one else. Only you." What was the point of saying things like this now? I tried to pull my hand free, but his grip was like iron, impossibly heavy. "Come home with me." He dragged me toward the exit. There was no way I would let him have his way. In the struggle, my abdomen slammed into the corner of the table. A sharp, violent pain shot through my entire body. My face went pale as I instinctively clutched my stomach. Victor caught me immediately. "What's wrong, Charlotte? What's wrong? Where are you hurt? Don't scare me." I grabbed his arm tightly. The baby. Victor's eyes filled with confusion. His gaze dropped to my abdomen, staring at it blankly. I stared at him with reddened eyes, my gaze vicious. "Victor, if anything happens to my child, I swear I'll make sure you and Elisa don't die peacefully." As for the child in my womb, it could only be said that he came at the wrong time, but I couldn't bring myself to give him up, because this might be the only child I ever have in my lifetime. It wasn't that Victor made me lose faith in love or marriage. It was simply that if 22 years of love could be replaced so easily, why should I keep gambling on it again? Love is good, marriage is good, but I, Charlotte, am better. I have money, I have looks, I deserve the best the world has to offer. If love and marriage can't make my life more complete, then I don't need them. But a child is different. Being a mother is something I want to experience. Lying on the hospital bed, Victor held my hand tightly. I struggled a couple of times but couldn't pull free, so I let him be. The doctor said, "You're showing signs of a threatened miscarriage, but your physical condition is quite good. It's not serious. You'll need to stay in the hospital for a few days, receive 4 treatment to stabilize the pregnancy, and rest well afterward. Keep your emotions stable and avoid any further impacts." Victor nodded. "Thank you." Chapter 10. After the doctor left, a nurse came in to start my 4. Victor watched her without blinking and reminded her anxiously, "Be gentle." Perhaps intimidated by Victor's presence, the nurse's hands trembled slightly. And of course, what you fear most is what happens. She missed the vein. SSS. Victor sprang to his feet, his voice low and sharp. "Didn't I tell you to be careful?" The nurse was startled and apologized repeatedly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I shot Victor an impatient look. "Victor." He turned to me. "Get out." His face stiffened, his jaw clenched so tightly that even the hand hanging at his side curled into a fist. Then he spun around and left without another word. The nurse looked at me, completely at a loss. I softened my tone. It's fine, go ahead. She nodded gratefully. This time, it went smoothly. I barely felt a thing. The foredrip was slow. I lay on the bed, bored, and after a while drifted into a drowsy sleep. In my dream, it felt like someone tucked the blanket around me. Then the arm with the 4 slowly warmed up. When I suddenly woke up, the sky outside had already darkened. I lifted my head. The 4 bottle was gone. The only light in the room came from the sofa to the side. Turning my head, I saw Victor sitting there upright, a laptop resting on his legs. The faint glow of the screen illuminated his face, calm and controlled as ever. Sensing my gaze, he looked up sharply. Our eyes met. I was the first to look away. You're awake. Are you hungry? Victor turned on the light, and the room instantly brightened. He picked up a thermal container beside him. I had Aunt Lou make your favorite chestnut porridge. I asked her to add red dates too. Do you want to have some? As he spoke, he opened the lid and was about to serve me some. Why are you still here? Victor paused. My wife and my child are here. If I'm not here, where should I go? I frowned, my tone sharp with irritation. Go drink your little sweetheart's soup. Go eat her cooking. Go drink coffee with her on the rooftop and admire the view. Go walk her home. Do whatever you want, just don't stay here. He scooped the porridge and handed it to me. She's not my sweetheart. I don't have a sweetheart. I only have you. Eat a little, once. His composure was what I found most attractive. Now, it disgusted me. I swatted the bowl out of his hand. It hit the floor with a loud clang. Victor, can you stop being so irritating? Other than divorce, please don't appear in front of me again. Victor lowered his head, staring at the broken bowl on the floor. His figure looked strangely dejected. After a long moment, he crouched down, picked up the bowl, and silently began cleaning. I couldn't stand the sight of him looking like a wronged little wife. A fire burned in my chest, tight and suffocating. What exactly do you want? Who are you acting like this for? I don't need you to stay with me. I don't need you to take care of me. I only need you to divorce me. The moment the word divorce left my mouth, Victor snapped his head up. His eyes were bloodshot, his face filled with restrained, tangled emotion. Charlotte, can we not divorce? Please? I shook my head decisively. No. His breathing grew heavy. I was wrong. I didn't manage my distance with Elisa properly, but I only saw her as a normal friend. Am I really that unforgivable? Do you really have to sentence me to death? Can't you even give me a chance to correct my mistake? My heart felt a little tight. I sighed softly. Others could be forgiven. You can't. Because you are Victor. He looked confused. For all these years, the only opposite-sex friend you have ever personally acknowledged is Elisa, right? Even those who grew up with us never received that honor. Yes. Right now you're just friends. But what about later? Victor, ask yourself honestly, if I hadn't escalated this to divorce, if I had only argued with you, made a fuss, or even threatened you, what would you have done? You would have found me annoying. You would have thought I was petty, narrow-minded, unreasonable. You would have told me again and again, we're just friends. Do you know what I hate the most? People who wave the banner of just friends while doing ambiguous things, then turn around and blame me, and even say that whatever happened was forced by me. Why bother? Why not cut it off at the source? A rotten piece of flesh, cut it out. And it's done. Victor shook his head slowly. He looked at me pleadingly. Charlotte, you can't do this. You can't abandon me over things that haven't even happened. These are just your assumptions. They won't happen, and they can't happen. I rubbed my temples. Do you know what risk assessment is? Victor stiffened. Then what about us? Our 22 years together, are you just throwing them away so easily? We have a child now. We could get better and better. Charlotte, you still love me. You still love me. It was as if that love was his final lifeline, the confidence I had once given him. I cut him off. Victor, do you love me? For the first time, he answered that question directly. His gaze was steady, his eyes firm. Charlotte, I love you. I laughed softly. You can do things with blurred boundaries and ambiguous intimacy while loving me, and I can choose to divorce you while loving you. What's wrong with that? Victor's face went pale. He looked at me as if drowning, utterly desperate. I turned my head away, unwilling to look at him anymore. Victor, I'll give you 1 week. I'm telling you this clearly and seriously, I will only give birth to this child if I am divorced. Otherwise, after 1 week, I will terminate the pregnancy. My words were cold and merciless, hurting him, and hurting myself. Behind me came a dull crash, followed by Victor's hoarse, beast-like roar. Charlotte. Chapter 11. I stayed in the hospital for a full week. During that week, Victor behaved like a dutiful son, morning and night, without fail, bringing me meals, dishes, and soup 3 times a day. Aside from knocking over a bowl of porridge at the beginning, I didn't keep up the dramatics afterward. Whatever food he brought, I accepted it all. After all, no matter what, there was no reason to make myself suffer. And to be fair, the food Victor brought was genuinely excellent. I ate what he brought. Yet somehow that only seemed to make Victor more miserable. He said, "Charlotte, I'm really scared when you're like this. I feel like you're getting farther and farther away from me." I had to admit, he was sharp. He always saw straight to the core of things. But was I really as indifferent as I appeared? Not exactly. 22 years of feelings, I wasn't a robot. Facing him, I still felt sad. I still felt hurt. But every single bout of sadness and pain reminded me of one thing. He was the one who caused it. He was the one who abandoned our 22 years first. I replayed and reanalyzed this process over and over again in my mind. 1,000 arrows piercing the heart, this was what it felt like. With both Victor's and my consent. News of my hospitalization to stabilize the pregnancy was kept under wraps. So in the end, only one person came to visit me. Selena. Selena was chatty and gossip-hungry, incapable of shutting up for even a second. She dumped everything going on in their company on me in one breath. She said Victor had fired Elisa. She said Elisa had stormed into Victor's office to confront him, putting on that teary but unyielding act. She couldn't understand why men were always drawn to that type. She said Elisa demanded to know what she had done wrong. Victor's response? "I'm the boss. Do I need a reason to fire an employee?" Selena said that line was insanely cool. She said Elisa's face turned pale on the spot, looking utterly wronged and devastated. But Victor didn't even spare her a glance. I was puzzled. How do you know all this so clearly? Had gossip at their company really become this public? Selena said. After Elisa rushed in, President Kim told me to bring him a cup of coffee. Then he asked me to wait, saying there was a document for me to take out later. So I witnessed the entire thing. She looked very proud. I was utterly speechless. Judging by my complicated expression, she finally realized something. So I was basically used as a messenger? Heh, men really are dogs, weren't they? Belated affection is cheaper than dirt. Realizing your mistake only after losing someone, what's the point of that? By the 5th day, Victor still hadn't given me an answer, so I scheduled the abortion. That night, Victor sat by my bedside, looking pained and utterly defeated. He said, "Charlotte, you're too ruthless. You gave me 22 years, gave me the confidence to believe that no matter who left me in this world, Charlotte never would. But you abandoned me without hesitation. You didn't leave me any room to turn things around. Charlotte, you're too cruel." Victor was choking up. He cried. That realization made my heart tighten for just a moment. Then it passed. I said calmly, "Then let's just say I was wrong." Victor shook his head. "No, it was all my fault. I didn't cherish you." With reddened eyes, he looked at me. "Charlotte, if we could do it all over again, would you still choose to be with me?" That question stunned me. Looking back on those 22 years, we walked that entire road together. I was by his side. He was by mine. "Yes," I answered. Victor stared at me blankly. "Victor, I'm 25 this year. You span my entire life. You accompanied me and protected me, no matter what happened. You were always the first to appear by my side. You didn't miss a single stage of my life. You witnessed all of me. Victor, falling in love with you was only natural. I can't deny the past 22 years because of today's mistake, and I can't accept today's mistake just because of those 22 years. So what do we do? Victor? Tell me, what do we do?" Tears slid silently from my eyes. Victor stared at me, then let out a hoarse, anguished cry. For the first time, he truly understood what he had done wrong. In a raspy voice, he said, "Charlotte, I agree to the divorce." Chapter 12. Because there were no property disputes, my divorce from Victor went very smoothly. Looking at the freshly issued divorce certificate, I let out a long sigh, a mix of emptiness and relief. Do I hate Victor? It doesn't seem to have reached that level yet. But as long as he continued to occupy the identity of my husband, everything he did made me feel like there was a thorn stuck in my throat. Only by shedding that identity could I truly let go. What should this be called? For now, let's call it self-rescue. Victor drove me home. At the door, I stopped him. "This is far enough." Victor looked haggard, dark circles heavy under his eyes. He said, "Charlotte, can I come see you in the future?" Probably not. Silence fell between us. I turned and went into the house, leaving Victor standing there. Pablo and Mary had already returned from their trip. Seeing me, Mary was overjoyed. "Charlotte, have you lost weight?" she asked with concern. "Lost weight? That's a good thing." Pablo came downstairs. "Where's Victor? Didn't I see you come back together?" "We're divorced." I had no intention of hiding it from them. Both Pablo and Mary were stunned, standing there blankly, staring at each other wide-eyed. I handed the divorce certificate to them. "This." Pablo stared at me. "What's going on with you, kid? Something this big, and you didn't even think to discuss it with us? Do you even see us as your parents anymore?" Mary smacked him hard. "Why are you yelling at Charlotte? It must be Victor's fault." As she spoke, she pulled me down onto the sofa. Just like countless times when I was little, Mary wrapped an arm around me and gently stroked my hair. "Charlotte, have you been wronged? It's all Mom's fault. Mom should have stayed home with you." Smelling the familiar fruity scent on Mary, my nose suddenly stung, and tears streamed down my face. I clutched her tightly, buried my face in her arms, and began to wail. So much grievance, so much anger, so much emptiness. All of it erupted in this moment. I cried like a child, without restraint. All the composure, calmness, and self-control gone in an instant. I cried for a long time, until I eventually cried myself to sleep. At home, in my mother's arms, I finally had a peaceful sleep. When I woke up, it was already 3 in the afternoon. When I pushed the door open, only Mary was home. Pablo was nowhere to be seen. Mary had made soup. Drinking this bowl of my favorite soup, I felt completely soothed. Mary said, "Rest at home for a while. Leave the company matters to your father. Aren't you going to ask why I got divorced?" Mary rubbed my head. "If you want to tell me, Mom will listen. If you don't, I won't press you. The marriage is over. And it's over. Our family can afford to support you." My eyes rolled playfully. "What if it's 2 of me?" "Mary, what 2? I touched my belly. "You're going to be a grandmother." Hiss. Mary's eyes widened as she sucked in a sharp breath. This was a bit too big a piece of news for Mary to handle. She immediately called Pablo. Pablo sounded completely confused. "Grandfather? What grandfather? Whose grandfather?" But he quickly figured it out. He roared, "You're saying I'm going to be a grandfather?" Then he gritted his teeth and said, "I'm going to find Victor." I panicked. "Dad, why are you looking for Victor?" Pablo's tone was nasty. "He bullied you into this state, and I'm not allowed to settle accounts with him? What? Are you still protecting him?" Settling accounts, fine. That was okay. I relaxed. "Just take it easy. I know my limits." I was quite reassured about Pablo. At least. At first. But the facts proved I relaxed too early. According to my informant Selena, my dear father stormed into Victor's conference room and beat him up in front of a room full of people. The old man was a bit reckless there, beating someone else's boss on their own turf, pretty wild. But Selena said Victor never fought back from beginning to end. He even stopped the security guards when they tried to intervene. He willingly took a beating from my dad. Even so, it didn't calm Pablo's anger. For an entire week, he didn't give me a pleasant look. Every day he wore a sour expression. It made me hesitate over whether I should just move out on my own. Then the next day, Pablo brought a group of people home. Mary asked what he was doing. He said he was clearing out the study to set up a nursery. The study had the best lighting in the entire villa. I had once asked Pablo to give it to me so I could do my homework there, but he'd refused. I never expected that for the little thing in my belly. He would agree. Is this the legendary favoritism toward grandchildren? Watching Pablo and Mary bustling about, I felt deeply grateful for this moment of peace. Grateful that I was still myself, and for the little thing growing inside me. Baby, welcome to this world. Chapter 13, Extra, Victor. From the moment Victor could remember things, there had always been a pink and delicate baby doll by his side. That baby doll was called Charlotte. Her nickname also Charlotte. Charlotte looked like a well-behaved, adorable little girl, but Victor knew she was extremely domineering and very good at holding grudges. When Victor was 8, he fell in love with Lego. He could sit there quietly by himself and build all day. Charlotte didn't like it. Well, not exactly dislike it. She was only 5 at the time and didn't know how to build. But Charlotte didn't mind. When Victor built Lego, she would hug a storybook and lie beside him, reading with great interest. Often, she would fall asleep while reading. At those times, Victor would stop what he was doing, take a blanket, and cover her. One day, a girl came to visit with her mother. Seeing the Lego, she wanted to play too. Victor was actually unwilling, but out of respect for his mother, he still nodded. That scene was seen by Charlotte. She stood at the doorway holding her drawing book, cheeks puffed up in anger. She glared at Victor, snorted, then turned and walked away. Victor was startled and hurried after her. Charlotte, what's wrong? Charlotte pouted, her face full of grievance. She said, if you play with others, then I don't want you anymore. At the time, Victor found it amusing. He never expected it to become a prophecy. She really did stop wanting him. She had clearly told him long ago. How could he forget? How could he possibly forget? A friend said, you're just used to Charlotte being around. After some time, you'll be fine. Anyway, you don't love her. Victor felt this was the most ridiculous thing in the world. He slammed the glass in his hand hard onto the ground and growled, I love her. He loved Charlotte. He only loved Charlotte. But why? Why did even his best friend think he didn't love her? Charlotte had always been the one who drew attention, no matter where she was. She always attracted everyone's gaze. The way those people looked at Charlotte made him uncomfortable. So, as if declaring ownership, he would pick Charlotte up from school and walk her home every single day. But even so, he still couldn't be by Charlotte's side at all times. At that time, Charlotte was in her first year of high school, and Victor was already in college. Though they were in the same city, the distance between them kept growing. That day, he saw a photo in a group chat, flowers lining the ground, scattered candlelight, a boy kneeling on one knee in front of Charlotte, holding a guitar. That was the first time Victor felt panic. He rushed out of the dormitory and hurried back. But standing outside Charlotte's house, he suddenly didn't know what to do. His mother had once sighed, with your terribly low emotional intelligence, what would you do without Charlotte? Charlotte saw him from the window. She rushed out of the house and threw herself into his arms. The softness in his embrace made his heart race. He hurriedly pushed her away, embarrassed and flustered. He scolded, so reckless, what do you think you're doing? Charlotte didn't care at all. She looked at Victor with a bright, mischievous smile. She asked him bluntly, did you come back because you saw the photo? Were you jealous? Before Victor could answer, Charlotte continued, don't worry, I won't be with anyone else. I already turned him down, after all. I'm someone who's going to be Victor's girlfriend. Hearing this, Victor's heart finally settled. Charlotte was always like this. She could give him all the sense of security he ever wanted. Fueled by alcohol, Victor called Charlotte and told her about the incident. He wanted to tell Charlotte that he loved her, that he had loved her since that time. Charlotte remained silent. After a long pause, she said, then do you still remember how you answered me back then? How could Victor not remember? After hearing Charlotte's words that day, he had said, what photo? I don't know. I came back to get my study materials. By the way, don't slack off, study hard. Victor's grip on the phone tightened sharply. No, that's not it. I was just embarrassed to tell you. Charlotte cut him off. She said, Victor, Do you really think you seeing that photo was an accident? If it weren't for my consent, who would have sent such a photo to a group you were in? At that time, you had gone to college, and you were getting farther and farther away from me. I was scared. I was afraid you'd fall for someone else. I was afraid you wouldn't wait for me anymore. I desperately wanted to prove that you loved me. So, even though I knew someone was going to confess to me, I still went. After that photo was sent out, I kept waiting from afternoon until night. I was so happy when you appeared. In that moment, I felt like I had obtained the whole world. Charlotte's words made Victor feel as if his heart were being sliced by knives. Charlotte continued, I asked you if you were jealous, but I didn't leave you any space to answer. Do you know why, Victor? Because I was afraid your answer wouldn't be what I wanted. I was afraid you'd disappoint me. I deceived myself, thinking that as long as you showed up, it was enough. As long as you showed up, it meant you cared about me. Victor, we can stay in touch, talk about work, talk about life, talk about the child, but let's not talk about love anymore, okay? You say you love me, but I've spent all these years trying to prove that you love me. Victor, I'm tired. Chapter 14, Extra, Victor. Victor's smoking habit had been a bit heavy lately. The ashtray in front of him was already full of cigarette butts. Ever since the divorce, he had moved out of Violet. A Violet without Charlotte made him feel suffocated. In the past, Violet had been nothing more than a cold, lifeless building. It was Charlotte who, bit by bit, had given it warmth and vitality. The carpet on the floor, the oil paintings on the walls, the vase on the table, the stickers on the refrigerator, the throw pillows on the sofa, the decorations on the shelves, and the ginkgo tree outside. All those details he once ignored now felt like steel nails, one after another, being driven straight into his heart. Painful, excruciating. Standing on the balcony, from where he was now, he could see Charlotte's house perfectly, even though he couldn't see Charlotte herself. It was as if only under this shared sky could he truly breathe. On those sleepless nights, he questioned himself countless times. How had he let things between him and Charlotte come to this? When they had once been so harmonious, so perfectly in sync. Victor narrowed his eyes slightly. He thought back to his college days, to the day Charlotte confessed to him. It was an ordinary day. He was playing basketball with classmates in the gym, and Charlotte was sitting in the stands watching. There were many girls sitting there just like her, but every time Victor lifted his eyes, he could immediately lock onto Charlotte. After the game, he went to the locker room to change. Charlotte followed him in. Victor was startled, seeing the others behind him changing clothes. He grabbed his jacket and threw it over Charlotte's head, then pulled her outside. Charlotte peeked her head out from under the jacket. Victor's oversized coat hung loosely on her shoulders, covering her all the way down to her legs. Victor darkened his face, about to scold her, but Charlotte grabbed the hem of his jacket and suddenly leaned in close. She tilted her head up, looking at him with those eyes of hers, eyes filled with starlight. She said, "Brother, want to date? The kind that leads to marriage." Victor could still remember exactly how he felt in that moment. His heart raced. His whole body trembled. He wanted to hold her, wanted to kiss her. Who could refuse such bright eyes? He said, "Okay." He thought he could protect the light in those eyes forever. But in the end, it was he himself who let dust settle over them. Those 3 years in college were the most beautiful 3 years of his life. He and Charlotte lived together. The place wasn't big, but it was warm. Every morning, Charlotte would prepare breakfast for him and give him a good morning kiss. She would smile and say, "Boyfriend, work hard today. I'll take care of our home." Every night when he came back, no matter how late, she would be sitting on the sofa waiting for him. She would always hug him, rub her little head against his chest, and say, "Boyfriend, you've worked hard." What Charlotte gave Victor was always an abundance of love. But what did Victor give Charlotte? Demands, criticism, rules. Perhaps because he was 3 years older than Charlotte, he had always played the role of a parent in front of her since childhood. He reminded her to study hard. He urged her to sleep early and wake up early. He criticized her for being too pampered. Once, Charlotte muttered, "This isn't like finding a boyfriend at all. This is clearly like finding myself a dad." What did he do then? Just like so many times before, He looked at Charlotte with a warning gaze and asked, "What did you say?" And every time that happened, Charlotte would beg for mercy, grab his arm and shake it, saying, "I love my boyfriend the most." Victor's heart trembled. He couldn't help but raise his hand and slap himself hard. In this relationship, he hadn't even figured out his own role. No wonder Charlotte didn't want him anymore. It seemed he had never really given Charlotte any tenderness. Just as Charlotte said, it seemed he hardly ever smiled at her. So all these years, what exactly had he been doing? Chapter 15, Extra, Victor. Victor thought of the time he married Charlotte. Before the wedding, there was the fitting of the wedding dress. Charlotte coaxed him to go with her, but Victor simply couldn't make the time. That period was far too busy. In order to free up time for the wedding itself, he had compressed all his work into one stretch. Charlotte was disappointed, but she didn't blame Victor. She tried on many wedding dresses, took photos one by one, and sent them to Victor. She asked, "Which one looks better?" Charlotte in a wedding dress was breathtaking, so beautiful it felt unreal. Like an angel, so beautiful that Victor wanted to hide her away. So much so that even in the middle of a meeting, he was stunned for a moment. In the end, he chose a relatively conservative dress, then saved every single photo, one by one. Charlotte didn't blame him. She understood how busy he was. That made the tension in Victor's heart ease slightly. They say that crying children get candy. Charlotte never cried, never complained. So Victor ignored her, ignored the fact that his Charlotte also needed companionship. On their wedding day, he was extremely nervous, more nervous than the first time he ever went to negotiate business with others. Because of that nervousness, his expression was tense the entire time. He also heard what those people were saying. They were speculating that he, the groom, had been forced into the marriage. Victor scoffed at it. This was the girl he had longed to marry with all his heart. He assumed Charlotte would be just as certain as he was, but he never expected that she would actually be hurt by those words. If time could turn back, he would storm into the dressing room, pull Charlotte into his arms, and kiss her deeply. He would tell everyone that this was the girl he loved down to his very bones. But there are no ifs in this world. What was missed was missed. Charlotte gave him unwavering certainty, but what he gave Charlotte was doubt and unease. He deserved it. He hadn't realized how different he was toward Elisa, nor that this difference would end up hurting Charlotte. He admitted it, he was wrong, but he refused to admit that he liked Elisa. Yet he couldn't deny that within his own marriage, he had been distracted because of someone else. After he dismissed Elisa, she came to see him. She cried and said, "Victor, why are you treating me like this? You clearly have feelings for me." Victor asked in return, "You think I have feelings for you?" Elisa nodded firmly. "I can feel it. You're different with me. I know it. You must like me. Victor, let's be together, okay? You're already divorced now. There are no more obstacles between us. We can truly be together." Victor's heart hurt, an intense, densely packed pain. The little girl he had loved for more than 20 years still couldn't be certain that he loved her. Yet someone who had only appeared in his life for half a year dared to say such things. What had he done? Exactly? To what extent had he hurt Charlotte? "Elisa, I don't like you. Not in the past. Not now. And not ever in the future. If I did anything that made you misunderstand, I apologize. But if you appear again in front of me and Charlotte, I won't be polite." Victor's tone was icy as he turned and walked away. Behind him, Elisa's face was deathly pale, her body swaying as if about to collapse. She said sharply, "Victor, do you think you're so great? Do you really think you're not at fault? If you didn't like me, you shouldn't have sent out signals that you were approachable. You were the one who let me get close. And now you're saying that everything was just my imagination. Who do you think you are? Now you just walk away and claim you did nothing? Victor, you're a scumbag. A complete jerk. Just like all the other men." Victor was exhausted in both body and mind, more lost than ever before. So this was all Victor amounted to. So this was all his self-righteous love amounted to. In the end, the divorce couldn't be hidden from either side's parents. That day, Charlotte's father beat him badly. He didn't fight back. He knew this was what he deserved. Soon, the matter reached his own parents. He was called back home. His father shook his head at him in disappointment. He had been his parents' pride his entire life. Seeing that expression on his father's face for the first time nearly suffocated Victor. His mother sighed, brought over the medicine kit, and tended to his wounds. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she sighed and asked, "Does it hurt?" Victor trembled. He opened his mouth, wanting to speak, but in the end only a choked sob escaped. Victor, who had always forced himself to be calm, composed, and self-controlled, finally broke. Tears flowed uncontrollably. He clutched his heart, which felt as though half of it had been hollowed out. "Mom, it hurts so much." Chapter 16. On the 15th day of the 12th lunar month, Charlotte gave birth naturally to a baby boy. He was all wrinkled and scrunched up, not cute at all. Charlotte shook her head and sighed. "Why is he so ugly?" Mary immediately covered her mouth. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "That's right," Pablo chimed in. "Our precious grandson is very handsome." Pablo was smiling so broadly that his face was full of wrinkles. That greasy expression was almost blinding to Charlotte's eyes. Charlotte glanced toward the door. "What is it?" Mary asked. Charlotte shook her head. "Nothing. Maybe I was seeing things." She thought she had seen Victor, but it was probably just her imagination. Today wasn't even her due date. She had gone into labor suddenly and had been rushed here by the family driver. Mary and Pablo only arrived after she was already in the delivery room, and given the prejudice Mary and Pablo held against Victor, they would definitely not have notified him. So she must have been mistaken. Outside the hospital room, Victor stood with his back against the wall, hearing the laughter and joy inside. The corners of his mouth lifted unconsciously. Inside were the girl he loved most, and the child who carried the blood and bone of them both. As long as they were safe, everything was fine. Chapter 17. Elisa hadn't been doing well lately. Charlotte heard this from Selena. Selena seemed especially enthusiastic about watching Elisa's downfall. Charlotte thought to herself, is this some kind of professional ethics of a villainous supporting character? Selena said that Elisa had already changed 5 jobs, and at each one she hadn't lasted more than 3 months. She was fired before even getting the chance to pass probation. When she was still at our company, Elisa was never particularly careful or diligent at work. Ask her to make a cup of coffee and she'd spill it on someone. Ask her to print documents and she'd mess up the page order. If she wasn't tripping over nothing, she was crashing into someone's arms. All day long she'd look pitiful and keep saying she was sorry. The key point is that all the men in our company fell for that. They could tolerate all of Elisa's mistakes, smiling foolishly and thinking she was cute. Now it's different. Once she left our company, she lost that kind of treatment. I heard that she lost her last job because she spilled a cup of coffee on a client, and the client's suit was custom-made. Water ruins it instantly. Because of that, she ended up owing more than 100,000. Selena smacked her lips. Tell me, why was it only the men in our company who fell for that act? Is it because they're all especially blind? Blind in packs? Charlotte understood. Maybe it's because her crown fell off. Selena blinked. Don't lower your head, or the crown will fall. Charlotte was speechless. Just focus on doing your own work properly. Why are you paying attention to her every day? Selena nodded repeatedly. I won't anymore. I won't. The last time I saw her at a cafe, I suddenly noticed her skin looked dull, with no glow at all. It's strange. Why did I ever envy her good skin before? Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Who knows? As long as we live our own lives well, that's enough. There's no need to waste ourselves for anyone else.